Welcome to the Fandom Foundry. And this is the MakerCast, where I talk to the awesome people who make the things that we love and hopefully inspire you to become creators in the future. Wow. Tried that a couple times. We'll see how this goes. I am joined today by two very awesome local kid literature authors. One, if you've listened to me on any podcast over the years, you might have heard her name mentioned before. That is my wife, Cristina Oxtra. She is the creative side of me, the writer, the illustrator, the journalist, the cat rancher. That is Cristina Oxtra. Also joined by Trisha Speed Shaskan. I met Trisha because Cristina decided to go on this path of authordom, and then I was introduced to the slew of amazing creators, and it's been amazing seeing all of you do awesome things over there. So a lot of people, when they find out I have a spouse who happens to be a writer, starts asking me questions. So I'm like, that was the inspiration, really like, oh, well, we should have these awesome people on because I know a little bit just from learning your stories, but I think at this time it's great to hear about your stories. So I always start my shows with new guests with your geek origin story. So not to show any preference to my wife, I'm going to start with Trisha. Oh. Trisha, by all means, you're an amazing author, musician, and other than that, I want to know more about you. I'm sure I know a lot about it, but I'm sure there's some things I don't. So what is your geek origin story?
Well, I'm going to follow the path of why I became a children's book author. And it really started with my family at home. My mother was an avid reader, and my dad always read us picture books at night. We got to hear Dr. Seuss, but our very, very favorite was In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak. I have a very beat up copy here that is actually signed by him right there. And from Storyopolis, a store that used to be in LA. My sister actually got that. And I, as a kid, we loved the book so much. We thought it was so hysterical, and we loved the art and the rhythm of this book. And in the Night Kitchen, there's Mickey, and he gets milk. And so my mother, even as a kid, she used to call our milk Mickey Milk. And our whole family did. And we get read to, and then my mother modeled being an avid reader as well. She would, after dinner, she would read fiction every night and sit in her rocking chair. And I had a friend come over in high school who told me after dinner, your mom is the only mom I've ever met who just doesn't clean up or do the dishes. She's just reading her book. I think that was some pretty good role modeling. But anyway, I grew up in a family that nurtured my love of reading. And then as a kid, I even started writing when I was in second grade. I wrote poems. I read books, but I was really to me, the active side was writing. And it was how I was kind of processing the world. Like, it would snow out, I'd write a song about, or a poem about snow, or I did actually write songs and things like that. But then I started writing adventurous things about witches and everything else. And so when I was a English major at the University of Minnesota, I was writing stories then too, but really changed my path and headed me toward being a children's book author. Wasn't just one book, because I was steeped in incredible literature at the time. Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Dorothy Allison, and I was reading all these amazing authors, so I was super inspired. But I took this children's literature class, and there were all these classics I hadn't read, like George and Martha. I hadn't read The Hobbit until college. And so I read this literature, some of which I didn't read as a child, and I was like, this is the area I want to write. And so that's what shaped and shifted my writing toward children versus adult. So yeah.
And you were also an educator, right?
Yes. I mean, yes. So so out of college, I started teaching storytelling and writing to kids. And that actually really reinforced it, Todd, because then I was using picture books in the classroom all the time. One of my very favorite ones is to this day is my favorite. It's from the late 90s. It's called Raising Dragons, um, written by Jardine Nolan. And that story is about a kid who finds an egg that hatches and ends up to be a dragon. It was one of my very favorite picture books, still is to this day, and that reinforced me wanting to write them. And yes,
Oh,
the
look at that.
illustrator, thank you, is Elise Primavera, and thank you for pulling that up. It's an awesome book. It's still in print. It's still one of my favorites. And so when I was teaching, I would find these books that were stories that inspired me and the kids absolutely loved, and I was reading and reading books to the kids, and therefore I I fell in love with especially the picture book format at that time and really wanted to write one myself.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that. Trisha's a Minnesota native, and that's kind of how we've and you kind of helped. You've done some amazing work to bring together authors. I know Cristina is, that's one of the reasons why I think she's been able to do all the things she has, because she has an amazing collective of authors and friends, and she will talk more about that when she talks about her geek origin story. So, Cristina, what is your geek origin story?
It's so nice to hear that Trish, you had a family that really loved to read. It was the opposite. I was like the odd one out that loved to read in my family. I grew up in the Philippines, so I come from a multi-generational household. And most, like my cousins lived with us, and they were more like outdoorsy people, loved to play outside or watch TV. I was more the bookish person. I like reading. I don't recall ever going to like a public library, so my grandma would sometimes buy me like coloring books or kids magazines. We had like a Filipino kind of version of highlights. And that's what I love to read. And I would read that sucker from cover to cover because it was not a guarantee when she was going to buy me the next month's installment or whatever. So I would, if she didn't, then I would read that again. And when my mom had visited my aunt in Hawaii, she brought back comic books and other books that she got, like golden books. And then she got like comic books, like you guys remember Spooky and Wendy the Witch and Richie Rich and all that. So I read them all. They were like my treasures. Absolutely adored them all. And if my cousins wanted to borrow them, oh heck no. No, these were my treasures. And if they wanted to read them, I would like hover over them because I didn't want them to rip them or lose them or do anything. Yeah, Spooky, I love them.
For people of a certain age that may not have grown up with these characters, Wendy the Witch and Spooky Hot Stuff. Yeah, really fun. Harvey Comics was amazing. And Cristina, I think a lot of people may not know that, growing up in the Philippines, you got a lot of really interesting influences. You already talked about to me about, oh yeah, the cartoons that were on were a lot of Japanese cartoons, and you had that, and you had all these other different influences that were not common in the US, but you also got a lot of things from the US.
Yeah, like what we know now as anime here. I grew up with that long before it became cool and trendy here to watch anime and read manga. So there's a lot of influences, but I really wanted to write stories about people. I wanted to be a journalist because I wanted to be like, I was addicted to Sesame Street, so I wanted to be like Kermit the Frog in his journalist persona. You know how he always, you remember him? Hi, Kermit the Frog here, and he's got newsflash, right? And he'd be interviewing like the craziest fairy tale characters, whatever, and then hijinks would ensue, but he still got his story somehow. It was kind of a demented way of getting to his story, but he got a report. He reported, and so I wanted to be a journalist. That's kind of how I got into the writing, and I write it, interviewing people and writing stories about them. Those are my favorite. Hated politics, hated covering any kind of newsy stuff. I wanted features and meet people and tell their stories. Those were my favorite. Fast forwarding to many years later, I wanted to start writing stories when we had a child. I wanted to start writing stories. I also worked in the schools. I'm like, there's got to be a way for me to write stories. I started writing stories maybe in elementary school. But I just thought they were just stories, and, they gathered dust and put them away. But many years later, I went to Hamline University and studied creative writing for children and young adults. And that's really when my passion took off. I was introduced to a lot of Kidlit that I never knew even existed. And so many different authors, so many diverse authors that I didn't even know existed because they weren't being introduced to me when I was in school. So that's when I took off, and I read a book by sheer accident in the public library doing research. And I found Erin Entrada Kelly's book, and she's a Filipino author. So that's kind of what clicked in my brain, is like, oh my gosh, there's somebody like me. There's a Filipino author who's successful in writing stories and telling like my people's stories. And when I read her book, Blackbird Fly, I just laughed and cried and thought, oh my gosh, that's me. Oh, that sounds like my mom, or that sounds like somebody I knew. That's when it kind of clicked for me, like maybe I can do this too, ? So that's kind of part of my journey. And then when I got into that, I met more people who are writers. I met my tribe, and expanding them to that, I met you, Trish, and I met lots of others, and you introduced me to lots of other authors, illustrators, and creative people. And that's when I thought, hey, maybe that gave me hope of maybe, just maybe, I can finally do this, and be part of this awesome writers, creators community, especially here in Minnesota.
It's been a journey, and for everybody, every author has a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. We know that. I've learned that. Interestingly, I've learned more about publishing and all these things from meeting these amazing people, and it does take a village, because Christina's journey to get there was just kind of the one thing. She thought she was going to get a master's in some type of like administration within schools, and then she's like, maybe I could do this. And she happened to have the GI Bill, so I knew that. We were both veterans, so that was a good help there. And then along the way, you just have a pivot. And I know there's a lot of aspiring authors out there, but it's really, I see the sweat and the late nights that you guys put in, all of the things you do. That means that everybody has a story, but not everybody has the will to make it happen. So that's the impressive part. It's what you put into it. So all those things, it's the rejections, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because there's lots of gut punches in this industry, and for every success, there's probably like 50,000 failures, and that's the frustrating part. But we celebrate those wins big, and that's where I think this group you guys have created is amazing. So, but going from there, we did get some questions, so I'm going to mix it in with some of the questions I kind of gave you guys as a guide. But Chance Siegel, he is a part of the Nerd Chat podcast. He's also basically a school counselor, and he's a great guy, and he's been interested in maybe writing himself. And his question was, what's your favorite book as a child, but also as an adult? I know we've kind of talked about some of those things that inspired you, but we can talk about the really important stuff, but we can talk about like, what are those just books that you just loved, that just really loved,
You got one?
Go first.
I can answer that pretty quickly. Well, as a child, I did already mention In the Night Kitchen by Marie Sendak, but I'm just going to cheat and mention a couple. Where the Wild Things Are was hugely influential on me, and I know it is for so many. And it's not because it's pretty much a perfect book, but it's also because for me, my 70s and 80s childhood was imagination. And I spent so much of it imagining, whether it was putting on Wonder Woman underoos and tearing around the neighborhood and pretending I was Wonder Woman, or dressing up as a witch on Halloween. All of those things were my childhood. And so when Max when his when he has his big adventures of imagination, it just really hits the childhood experience. So that would be one of my favorites. Another favorite of mine was Tilly Witch, about a witch who, it's by Don Freeman, who is better known for Corduroy, but she wasn't
Really?
feeling scary on Halloween. But I just loved that one because it was funny, and it was one of the first books I chose at the Riff event, and I do own a copy of that today. And so those are a couple childhood. As an adult, it is hard to choose. However, the book that I've read the most and reread that speaks to my heart is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. And once again, the reason for that is because it's everything I love, and it actually is a lot of my childhood once again. It is the river. It is Ratty and Mole, and it's friendship. And it's kind of, I just heard Ann Patchett talking about it, but she was kind of talking about how it precedes all the classic friendship stories like Frog and Toad, because it's this beautiful, beautifully written book about friendship. And to me, I turn to that book in all seasons. Like if I'm sad, if I'm happy. I remember one Christmas I was sick with some horrible virus and I missed Christmas, so I just sat and read The Wind in the Willows. And so that is the book that really captures my childhood a lot, because I grew up in Winona, Minnesota, which is a Mississippi River valley.
Mhm.
And they love playing about in boats in the wind in the willows. And for me, every summer was spent on that river. By the time I was 10, I was water skiing on that river. And my father drove speedboats, and I had my siblings, and I have a brother and sister, and my parents. And that was my summer every year, was the river. And we also had 2 lakes in Winona. So the water, friendship. And so that is my favorite book as an adult.
Excellent. Christina.
My favorite book that always comes up is a series, the Nancy Drew series, the original series. When I arrived in the United States and found that book in the school library, I really got into reading. I read one after the other of those books. I just adored her because, I got that copy, The Secret of the Old. I found that, I think it was a church or a garage sale, and I love that. And then I started reading them all. I just love her character as the strong, independent girl, who had cool friends, but also solved mysteries. I love solving mysteries. I like thrillers, murder mysteries, nothing gory or anything like that. But Sherlock Holmes, those kind of things of just solving things, solving mysteries. And who wouldn't want to be like Nancy Drew, right? Cool chick, got friends,
And she had a cool show in the 70s that a lot of people
cool
watched.
70s. In fact, it's so awesome they're reviving it now. There's like a more updated, modern version. I love it, and I will always go back to that. And now I like watching murder mysteries on TV, from Poirot to, anything Agatha Christie, I love. The most recent book that I'm not sure if I have anything adult wise that's a favorite, but the most recent one I've read that I really love is The Lost Apothecary. Once again, it's a murder mystery. Two different points of view, which is I find it hard enough to write from one point of view. So to have a dual POV, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I love that book and highly recommend it to anybody who wants to especially learn how to write dual POV. And it's historical. So one is modern and the other POV is it's way back when, kind of Victorian times, so, or even further back, I believe. So that kind of is one of my most recent favorites right now. I would highly recommend it.
So that leads me to actually, this is a question I just came to my mind. How do you avoid getting influenced by something you read and then accidentally putting it into a book? It's like a songwriter, right? You hear a song, you're like, I'm going to write a song. Like, oh, well, crap, I've now duplicated American Pie or something like that. Like, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, or maybe what are the tools even? Is it just like, I know, Christina, you use people to actually review your work in advance. You can pay for that service. Trisha, I'm not sure what you've done. I mean, that's obviously a slippery slope, right? You don't want to steal, but everybody gets inspired. There's only what is the classic there? It's like how many different actual stories types that there are, but it's your twist. It's all those things. Star Wars is basically based on Kurosawa films, right? It's like the hero's journey. So, I mean, but what's that thing that you need to do to say, stop yourself and go, ooh, I might have just copied something.
I don't know. I think sure, there's only a few really storylines there are, but everybody adds their own twist to it. We all come from a different background. We have different life experiences. How I would twist the story would likely be different from you, Todd, or from you, Trish, right? Because we all come from a different perspective, a different background. We grew up differently, cultural differences, whatever. And I think that's what you do. You might I like to write a Nancy Drew story, or I like to write an Agatha Christie story. Great, do it. But how can you make it your own? And I think you ask yourself, how do I make it different? And you approach it from that. You likely will not copy, or, if that's your fear, because you're coming from your different angle. There's no way you can exactly do it from her, because that was her time, that was her life, that she's drawing from her well of experiences. Your well is different from hers. I hope that makes sense. Right, Trish?
Oh, totally. And all stories are derivative. And I don't usually have, I guess, I don't feel I've ever had I don't think I've ever had a fear or a problem with it, with any kind of imitation or copying. I think, like, if I'm writing a mystery, for example, I'm also a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes, Christina. I love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. As a matter of fact, I just got to visit Baker Street in April, and so it was awesome.
Oh, based on the classic song Baker Street with the saxophone? Just kidding. It's a yacht rock joke for everybody.
I like her rock joke. But anyway, I love those stories. And I think, if anything, we have those classic stories like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes to help guide us. Like when I was going to write Q and Ray, which is a graphic novel series illustrated by my husband, Stephen Shaskan, I was rereading Sherlock Holmes, and they are very much, there's a lot of Sherlock Holmes in it. One of them becomes their goal is to be, Q wants to be a master of disguise. And so she's trying on these disguises and things. And that is what Sherlock Holmes did. And I think that we can absorb and learn from books, but just like Christina said, we'll make them our own. Like Christina and I could be writing the same scene, and it would never be the same or never be copied, because you're going to bring your own voice and your own idiosyncrasies into writing. And so I think steeping yourself in the kind of books you write and want to write, and then making it your own, is definitely the route to go.
Yeah, your voice is the strongest thing you have. Your style, and it resonates, and it's what draws people, and it's how you tell the story and how you introduce your characters, and that's what makes it famous. I mean, obviously, one of my favorite things every year is Christine will say, "Hey Todd, what is in the public domain now?" Right? Because that is the thing. Copyright, all of those things, they stop. So you can get people that have their own take on Sherlock Holmes. You cannot duplicate a work of art, but you can actually put Sherlock Holmes in other adventures, do other crazy things. I actually have a friend who I've had on before. His name's Christopher Abbott. He's British, and that's what he does. He is wrote 45 Sherlock Holmes books, and they're all different.
Amazing.
Interesting. We have local authors here, Trish, who've done Sherlock Holmes. Oh, Sherlock Holmes just happened to be in Minnesota, and he uncovered a mystery, which is
Yes,
I love that.
I've seen that.
It's the twist. It's the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies of it all, right? It's like, why not? If you got something cool to say, there may be an audience for it. So I like that. But yeah, it's that careful balance. Do your due diligence. Ask others and say, have I just duplicated something that was already done? Lifting complete dialogue, things like that. You know what? Because our brain is awash with so many influences. You think about like every song you hear, every jingle, everything you read, and it's like, oh, that's great. It's kind of like, what do you get enough monkeys with typewriters in a room and they'll recreate the works of Shakespeare? It just, things happen. But with that, a lot of people kind of want to know about the actual profession of writing, because there's many ways to do this. Everybody's got a story, but doesn't mean you're actually going to get published. So I've lived through Chris's journey. Trisha, you started before Cristina did. But give me like the 100-foot view, not all the details, not everything else. Like just basically what are the ways people can go ahead and get published? What are some of the pitfalls? And, what would you recommend as kind of like, what are some of the things you can do to look into this, use your time wisely, and also not just struggle and fail, because that's an obviously thing. But if you can learn from others, right? So if there's like things you could say, like, this is my recommendation, but this is the actual process. And then maybe some hints and tips of like, even like with that, like what's an automatic fail versus, oh no, I've learned from my mistakes and parts there. So who would like to start in regards to more of what are kind of what we would say is the current industry's process to get published?
I can start unless you would like to, Cristina. It's
no, Trisha has been doing this longer than me, so okay. I'll defer to you.
I've actually, I've talked to classes about this, and so I'll just give a little bit of what I would advise people who say, you know what, Trish, I want to write a children's book, and they're coming to me, or I've written one, and so the first and foremost, always is, of course, becoming a writer and a reader. So studying your craft on both sides. Now, what that looked like for me is I knew I wanted to write for children for about 8 years. And I had been writing, and I even wrote a draft of, like, let's say a young middle grade. And then I applied to grad school. And I did also take the route of getting an MFA. But the first and foremost is that foundation of seeing what's in the market, reading a ton of the types of children's books you want to write, like being familiar with what is actually out there. Not the ones that you necessarily read when you were a child, but what is being published right now. Be current and see where you might fit into there. And then number 2 is, of course, honing your craft. Now, people hone their craft in different ways. For me, I didn't feel that my writing was good enough, and so I went and got my MFA. I do have a BA in English, and I had taken creative writing classes. In college, I took a class. I took a couple classes at the Loft, and you can read craft books. Now, some people are strong enough writers that they don't need to go on and get a master's in their field. Maybe their writing is top notch, but for me, I felt I needed to level it up, and that was true. So I honed my craft in grad school. And when you're honing the craft, the other element is, of course, peers and community. And so let's say you go to a conference. There's an organization, for example, called the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. SCBWI is the oldest national and international organization for people in our field who are writing and illustrating for children. And that is kind of the business side. Like, they will show you, they can teach you, how you might get an agent and navigate the business. And they have some things about writing, but when you're there, it's a good place to connect with other people doing what you're doing. And so community would be the other component besides honing your craft, because you want writing groups and you want people who are coming up with you to help you, to encourage you, to have your friends there to encourage you, but also to help have people to bounce your ideas off and people who are on the journey with you that can support you. And so you're going to need community and peers, and you're honing your skills. And while you're doing that, it's great to have other people honing their skills alongside you. And that's really important. Like at the conference, let's say you went to a conference and you saw a famous author speak. When I went to a big national conference years ago, at a session, this awesome agent spoke, and he said, you know, the most important people at this conference aren't the editors, and they're not the famous authors. The most important people here are these writers around you who are going to help you get to where you need to go. So find your people and let them help you as well, because you know what, we're all at our houses. It can be isolating. And to have people along the journey that can take a while is really great. And so to me, those are kind of the foundations, because you absolutely need to know your craft. People will often say to me, Trisha, I've written this book, and how do I get an agent? And that's what they want to know right away. But the thing is I want to look at your story and say, is the writing good enough? Is the illustrating good enough? And so what you should be doing is finding resources to level up. Now, does it have to be a master's? No, but there are plenty of people, like Todd was mentioning, that Cristina does, but there are plenty of people you can even hire to read your work, like professionals. That would be authors. There's a lot of people in our field who will do it. You have to pay for it, or classes that you can take. And so hone the craft, get your community, and then you learn the profession. And so that, to me, that's kind of the foundation of starting a career in this business.
I appreciate that, because like I said, everybody has a story, but there are so many stories. If you look at a bookstore today, you just see it's overwhelmed, and people go to a trend, and it can be overwhelming how to get noticed, and it's a journey. Not everybody gets there overnight. Do you have an agent? All these things I've learned through my wife, that everybody has a journey, and there's not one path to it. So I think the other question becomes, and I actually got a question. This is from Mark Carabin. He's my Canadian. We podcasted together for many, many years. He's been wanting to write and get published, and he's in Canada. So not exactly the same situation in the US, but there's probably some commonality. He said, what kind of things would you suggest new authors keep in mind when sending in unsolicited manuscripts to publishers? For us here in Canada, there aren't really many agents with openings, so many of the submissions work is done on our own. He goes, what could help new authors stand out when doing submissions? And I've understand like the process, and I actually could share the screen. It's called querying, right? That's what you do. You query. Correct. That's what I'm like. That's a weird name. It's like a query is a question, right? So I'm like, I don't know, but that's the actual like process.
Yep, that's
with
the
that.
query.
So I guess
query letter. Yep.
Yeah. So Cristina, I'll put this to you, because I feel like this has been like a full-time job within writing books is querying. And you tell me how many that you've queried and how many things you've had. And both of you have had agents, right? But that's not always like, once you have an agent, you have them forever. It changes, right? So it's not exactly like one and done. It's a journey that may have stumbles and things through the process.
First, I want to piggyback off of and agree with what Trisha said, is the craft is the most important thing. Focus on that first before you start thinking about business, agent. I'm going to have my books in Barnes & Noble. Before you even get there, it's great to dream big. Hone in on that craft first. You may think you know how to write stories. I had a BA in journalism. That's a completely different way of writing than you're writing for kids. Well, I write essays. Great. But you need to write for kids. You need to know how to do it. There are things you need to know. So many different things I didn't even know. So honing your craft. If you can't, you don't have to get an MFA like Trish said. Not everybody is able to have that opportunity. But join SBWI. I'm a member. Authors Guild. I'm a member too. They have webinars. They have all kinds of resources that they share. The Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis. You can do online classes or in person. And that not only teaches you the craft, but you also meet people who are in the trenches with you, and you build your community that way too. I met Trish through the Mirrors and Windows Fellowship through the Loft. I finally got to meet her on person. I followed her online and I got to meet her on person. It was because of the Loft. As far as querying, so pretend, okay, so you think you're ready to submit, you think your story is great, you've had editor, you paid someone who is a professional to look at it, and everything is good. When you're querying, there's also a way to query. There's a way that you write these stories. I mean these letters of you're asking for an agent for representation. So do your research and know how to write one. It's not like writing a cover letter. It's not exactly like writing a cover letter for a resume. It's completely different. There's a formula and there's a way of doing this that you can look up online. And again, have a professional read it too, who's been through it, to make sure that you're doing this correctly. But also one thing you got to think is it's not one and done. You may get rejections, and I've never met an author who's never felt the pain of rejection, the sting of rejection. You have to, I guess, build a thick skin in this industry for rejections. Don't take it personally. Move on to the next. Cast a wide net, obviously. But if you get a rejection, don't let it stop you. If you really, really want to succeed in this business, I'm going to take summarize a quote from author Grace Lynn. She says, "Stay on the bus." The longer you stay on the bus, the more likely you might get that chance. So stay on the bus. Don't give up. One rejection shouldn't end at all. You'll get maybe many rejections. Some may be a form letter. Some might not even. Most unlikely, no feedback. More than likely, might not even get a rejection letter. It's just dead silent, and you move on.
And it's not in a letter that arrives in the mail, right? Anymore. It's not a thick one or a thin one like the old college application process. So it's like, and even you, Cristina, have told me like, oh, I didn't even look at it because I know. And it's like,
yeah,
you get a feel for it.
Most agents nowadays use Query Tracker. If you look that up, a lot of agents use that now. But if you don't want to go the agented route, it's called traditional way of doing publishing, you can also do work for hire. That's how I got started. You're basically a contract writer for publishers. So I got my start a semester before I graduated from my MFA. I just gave a sample of my work. I saw something posted on social media that Capstone were looking for diverse writers. I just what the heck, threw my hat in. Here's a sample of my work. Didn't think I'd ever hear from them again, but I did. A few months later, I hear from them, and that's how I got started. You're a contract writer. They give you, they tell you what they're looking for, give you some parameters, and those are your stories, really original stories. They own the rights to it, but you are writing stories. Those are legit books that will be on the shelves at schools, at libraries. So that's another way that you can do it if you don't want to do the traditional route.
And Trisha, you had work for hire background as well, right? And your own. I mean, and I can even share. I'm going to share your website right now. So this is Trisha's, and I've been bad because I didn't even say what you wrote. So we're going to talk about some of the stories you guys have wrote. But if I look here, a lot of these books are work for hire. They're very educational, beautiful, great stories that, quite honestly, you get a lot of exposure because these kids are getting their books at their public library, their school libraries. They can order these. It's really a good way to hone your craft, make connections, and make a living. Because being it reminds me of like being an author reminds me of being an actor, right? How many actors are the Tom Cruise, but how many are working actors, right?
Yes.
That are struggling and doing this because they just want the right part for the right role. So I mean, just some of these books are amazing. And look at that. Your name's right there.
Well, and the other thing is the public doesn't know the difference between a traditionally published book and a work for hire book oftentimes anyway, and kids certainly don't. But the books that I wrote for hire, which means it's an assignment and you don't own the copyrights, were really fun for me. And I didn't write anything for hire in general that I would write on my own. Like I would never write The Fairy's First Flight was like a tongue twister, for example. That is a tongue twister early reader with all these like tongue twisting words about how they fly, and it was super fun. But I wouldn't write like If You Were a Contraction on my own. And this was a math fun series that I actually helped create from the beginning. That was fun. But so with these books, yeah, that's a really great way to start. And I also started in grad school. In my first year of grad school, I started writing for hire just to have extra money on the side. But that is one thing, to your point, Todd, is everybody says, you know, when you're starting, don't quit your day job because books are hard. It's hard to make a living at them. But there's a quote, and I don't remember the woman who said it. She was local, but she said, you might not make a living, but you make a life. And that is not from me, and it's been passed down to many writers in the Minnesota community. However, I would also just wanted to kind of circle back to your original question, Todd, and just quick add for someone who is querying, and for example, a couple of things I would say about the cover letter, and I agree with everything Cristina laid out, which was awesome advice. But I would also say that know your market, look at where your story might fit in. So when you're writing that letter, how is your story fresh? And you're gonna like think what's your fresh angle when you're pitching the story to a publisher, an agent, whichever it is. It sounds like it's publishing houses in Canada, which they have awesome houses. I love Kids Canada, so many great ones. Christina's book, isn't it Lola, What Lola Wants? From which press is it, Cristina?
Yeah, it's from Kids Can Press in Canada.
It's a favorite press of mine. And yeah, Christina's beautiful picture book would be from Canada, from a Canadian press. But what I was going to say is, in that query letter for a person querying in Canada, you want to show how your book is fresh, but also how it fits in. You know, you might write comp titles, meaning it's comparable to this book or that book, but I wouldn't pick like an extremely famous book in the market. I would pick something a little bit like known, but not the bestseller in the business. But like, where does your book fit in? It's kind of like this, but it's unique. And so you want to kind of place it in the market, give it a fresh angle. And of course you want to present your best writing and best work. And so like for me on a query letter, those would just be a few tips I would add besides the awesome advice Cristina gave.
Yeah. And I know, you know, being part of Cristina's journey, she didn't know where to start. She wanted to get into writing. She always did. She journeyed down the path of self-publishing. Her first book, which is, it's freedom, but it is limiting. It is challenging. There are ways to make bad mistakes. There are ways to do that. And it's essentially you're on your own, or you're spending a lot of money and not promised to get anything from it. So let's just talk about that. So for people like don't know the terms of publishing, there's self-publishing / vanity press, which I know is a new term. There's traditionally published, and then there's work for hire. Is there anything else I'm missing from those buckets?
There's also, and I don't know exactly what it is called right now, but there's also sort of a hybrid in between, Todd. And okay. I think Beaver Pond Press does this, but there's also an in between where it is self-published, but you work with a book packaging company, and basically you pay them and they do edit it and art direct it, but then you're paying to have your own book made. So there's this kind of in the middle model too. And I'm not quite sure what that's exactly called. But yes, those are the ones, like the self-pub, I'll do it on your own. There's the hybrid middle. There's the work for hire where they're assigning you a book, but you're not going to get copyrights or royalties. And then traditionally published just means you wrote your own story, a publisher gave you an advance to do it, and then if it sells enough books, you do get more money on it once it reaches the advance.
I think we should also mention, for those who are looking for agents who are thinking of querying, there are a lot of scams out there right now, and they're getting good at it. I just received a phone call, in fact, today from a alleged agent, and left a message from me. And I knew right away this is not for real. But if you're new to this, you may fall for this. If any alleged agent contacts you and is asking for money first, that's a red flag. Be careful where you tread.
Watch out on LinkedIn, right? If your stuff is out there, you may be approached by people that want to take advantage of you. And I'm a business guy. I'm a corpo guy. I work for a big company. I do a lot of analysis. I know financials. A lot of authors don't. They're left brain, right brain, whatever. So make sure you know what you're getting into. Understand like your profit margin. If you're going to sell your own books, there's a cost to buy those books and then sell them. And it's like, okay, how valuable is your time and your money? I mean, Trish, you know this. Cristina, I mean, you guys go to these things where people are self-published and they sit out these fairs and they go to these shows, and it's like you're just hoping to sell a few, but it's like time is money. Your time is valuable, like when you do things. So I would say everybody that if you're going to get in this world and there's going to be financials done, please find someone to help you through that. Because if you make a wrong decision, you could be sitting on $10,000 worth of books that you'll never be able to sell. And then you're just stuck with them. And it just sucks, because that is your pride and joy. But then you're stuck feeling sad that you made the wrong decision. You're feeling foolish. So I'd always say have someone that can help you with the financials, because you may not be happy, and you may be like, oh crap, I'm stuck. So just a thought there. That's why a lot of agents can help you with that. If you're on your own, do make friends with someone who knows financials that is willing to help you, because it is challenging. And a lot of authors are creative more than financially minded. So that's okay though. Understand your limits and partner with somebody that's going to help you.
And beware of scammers.
Oh.
Beware of emails that it sounds like they're praising you, and or they for a fee. Be careful of that. Ask someone who knows what they're doing first before you even reply. It's scary out there. You get phone calls, you get emails. That sounds good. It might not be what you're looking for.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask another question. So I'm not trying to make this dim and dark, but I'm like, also, there's other ways to make money as an author. And I know this is an amazing thing, because I've actually been able to journey to parts unknown of Minnesota to go to school visits and library visits and do fun things. And Trisha, you do that. You partner with your husband, Steven. You guys do amazing stuff. Not only paid gigs, but you're out there just to highlight your stuff, get yourself out there. So marketing yourself and also finding other ways to make money is the heart of being a working author. So, that process too requires connections, right?
Yes. So this is one of the cool things about the work for hire I did for Capstone Press is I wrote a couple fairy tales. One is called Honestly, Red Riding Hood is so annoying, and it's the point of view. It's as told by the wolf. And then Seriously, Cinderella is so annoying.
Those
and
are
these
so cute, Trish.
Thank
Love
you.
them.
And I loved it. This was an assignment. This was actually pure joy to write. But these were just assignments, tell this point of view. It was riffing on the John Shaskan, The True Story of the Three Pigs, which is absolutely classic in children's lit. But Capstone wanted to do these perspective books because teachers teach perspective. And I got to choose which fairy tales, and I wrote these, and I got a flat fee. But the wonderful thing is first of all, I would have never written them because of the Shaskan books. But second of all, is I loved writing them. They were my own ideas. And so it was super delightful, just really fun. And honestly, Red Riding Hood was rotten. The wolf hasn't eaten in weeks. He's so hungry, and he's so delirious that she looks like a big, ripe red apple. And that happens to be his favorite fruit. So it's just hilarious and fun, and kids and teachers love it. And so, and I had fun with that voice. But what I was going to say is a couple of these books, and Cinderella as well, were so popular, and they're still popular, and teachers all over the country have them in their classrooms. And so I started to be asked to visit schools as an author. And while the books didn't make me that much money, it offered me this opportunity to go to schools and present on my books and tell and do presentations. And so that became another part-time job besides writing. And the other jobs I had is I started visiting schools, and that was really joyful for me. As an educator, I did work in classrooms as an assistant. I've also taught high school and run after school tutoring programs. And so I have a lot of background in education. And I've been an educator in some capacity for a long, long time, and I love it. And so this opened that door. But the other doors it opens, besides you can teach writing. So, you have books, you can teach workshops to kids, visit schools, go to libraries. But also being a published author also opens the door often that you can apply for grants. And the state of Minnesota has a lot of writing grants for authors. And once you have a book published, that opens other doors. And for me, that allowed me to get a grant and even the McKnight Fellowship because I had work for hire. And that was a huge deal to me, because in that one, you had to be published as an author, and then you send in original writing. And so all of these things are opportunities, and they're kind of stepping stones. So like in the beginning, when you were asking like what, kind of your origin story, everybody's does look different, but each thing that you do, it broadens your horizons. Like each thing you add to your portfolio. Oh, I did this book for hire. I got this grant. I did a school visit. You're building this whole life. And so I think, all of these things are really, really great stepping stones in your career. Yeah.
It's kind of like the analogy I think it would be very fun to say is like artists, right? They don't make a lot of money off their CDs and their albums, but they make it on tour. So
yes,
the
exactly.
children's visit is kind of like you going on tour, showing your personality, giving these kids your best, what you put into it, your personality shines, what you do. And it's pretty amazing. And this is just Trisha. If you follow her on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see where there's a lot of visits there. The kids are amazing, and you get to do some really cool things. You get to be creative too. You get to represent your books in a different way. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like that, the way of how do you make money any way you can. It's a hustle, but it's also enjoyable and it's fun.
The most rewarding part, the best part of writing really is connecting with the readers. So going on these school visits, library visits, special events where your readers come up to you and say, hey, I read your book, or I'm interested in your book. Can you tell me more about it? Or they've read it and they're talking about the characters as if they were real, and it's a smile on their face. That's the best part. When kids are talking to you about your stories and they have that smile on their face, that wide eyes, sparkle of wonder in their eyes. That is the absolute best part, I think, of writing. It's the most rewarding part. Yeah, sure, it pays a little more than you writing, but it's also really, I think that's why a lot of us write, right? Is to connect with the world and connect with the young readers. And when you meet them and they talk to you, it's magic.
And sometimes you don't get paid for it. Like this gig was just a really awesome thing we got to do. You got to go and connect with your community, the Filipino community in Minnesota. Got to talk to kids about your own book, which, we'll pivot it there. I think we haven't really talked about specifically some of the books that you've done, Cristina. And I think it's important to share because your journey's been different, obviously, than Trisha's, but it's some commonalities. So, you spent a lot of time with Capstone. You've gotten to be able to do like a lot of biographies, which are kind of fun. You've wrote a graphic novel, which is kind of fun with Little Red Riding Hood, where you got to take your own perspective on how you could retell that story with more of a Japanese flair, which is great. You got to work with an artist for the first time. You could write a choose your own book about aliens from a perspective of like more scientific and historical, which was fun because I grew up liking those books, but I was always horrible about choose your own adventure because I'd marked the page where I had to make a decision and I always hated dying, so I'd always go back. So I never finished those because I'm like, oh, I gave up because I'm like, I'm always dying. And then you get to do some cool books that meant a lot for you, showing your culture, your interests, with Taekwondo, where you and our son Logan joined Taekwondo together. He became an instructor. You guys both got your up to 2nd degree black belts, and you've already got your 3rd. You're going to that, and then you get to write a book about specifically Filipino culture with Tin Inkling, which is dancing, and dancing and kids sometimes is not the always the heart of kids' interest. And then you get to write a YA novel about a girl surviving through a really cool thing where you had to do a lot of research. And then the Teen Titans books, where our family, obviously growing up with being a big fan of the Teen Titans, the original show, the Teen Titans Go, Logan loving it so much, hearing so much about waffles. And I remember your journey. You're like, hey, Capstone, I heard you got a DC license. Could I write those? It was just you taking that shot to write these books, and they are amazing. It's great. If you love DC and these characters, Chris got the voice right, because I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like Beast Boy.
I think that's what an advice I would give to is to just shoot your shot. If you're interested, you have an interest of something, take your interest, and maybe you might be able to share your own experience with that interest and write your story. I always say there's no stories that's really impossible, or no story is dumb. I mean, if you see some of the silliest stories out there on the bookshelves, no idea is dumb. Really, it isn't. You could find somebody who's totally interested in it, or it'll make people laugh. Shoot your shot. You just never know. Just do it. Just write it.
Remember, kids like fart jokes.
And I've read so many of Christina's books, and I just love them. They're great.
Aww.
Yeah.
And it was I remember when Cristina got the Teen Titans, and my husband Steven and I got copy and read it, and we're just like, she just slayed. She totally captured it. And I absolutely love What Lola Wants, your latest picture book, which is just beautiful. The Minnesota Book Award finalist. And so, yeah, I agree with Cristina. Take risks, go for it.
So that leads me to another question, because we talked about illustrators. So while Cristina illustrated her first book, Mookie's Teeth, which was self-published, often that is not the way it goes. Trish, I think at this point, you've worked with a lot of illustrators. And a lot of people think, oh, you just pick whoever you want, right? No, it's not that simple, right? So tell me about kind of that process of working with an illustrator, because when I speak up to Cristina, she's like, no, it's not that way, Todd. You don't actually talk to him. You don't do this. I'm like, what? How do you even get it collaborated? So it's an interesting lesson for me to learn, because I'm like, I grew up, reading about comic book artists, and they work, the writer, Stan Lee would work with Jack Kirby, and they're right over there talking to each other. And it's funny because I don't think most people know this. Most comic book writers are work for hire. They don't own Spider-Man, so they are writing a story. So do not look your nose down on work for hire, because most of these people that do IPs don't own the characters. They're just taking their shot at that character they love, and they tell their story. And if they're lucky, maybe they got some residuals from it. But let's get back to that that illustrator author relationship. So what is that like?
So I've had a variety of experience in this area. Because I'm married to an illustrator. So I've had a few different paths. So first of all, the fairy tales, like for example, honestly, Little Red Riding Hood was rotten. And Seriously Cinderella, those are both illustrated by Gerald Gourlay. And what is I did not choose him. The editor chose him on that project. But what was so wonderful, and this has happened time and time again, and I'm guessing Cristina can relate to this, is the illustrator gets to surprise you. And, I have my own vision of what Little Red was going to look like. And then Gerald Gourlay comes in and just completely a unique, more wonderful version than I could have imagined. And I'll give you one example. So for example, in my story, the wolf imagines Little Red like an apple. And so he has, in one image, you can imagine this, but her dress is very round and she looks like an apple. And her granny is like a Granny Smith, like has the green dress. And they're both vain. And when the wolf gets into Granny's house, she has like photos of herself all over the walls. Cause like Little Red's always like looks at herself. And so like just these little, like the storytelling that Gerald Gurley did was just hilarious. And so I did not choose him. The editor at the publishing house did. Now, where it changes is if you're both professionals in the field. So by the time I had my first picture book published, which is called Punk Skunks, which is illustrated by my husband, Steven, we were able to pitch that picture book together. And the reason is not just because we were married. It was because we were both professionals at the time. I had already published books and so had Steven. And so we did this book together. Now, the difference when you pitch it together with, you know, for me, this is my husband. Sometimes siblings do. And sometimes even if two people are in the same agency, agents will pair people together with stories and send out a pitch to publishers. But the commonality is that you're both professionals. So if I was published and Steven wasn't a professional illustrator yet, and his skills weren't at that level, it wouldn't have worked. But the difference for that was really fun is we did kind of work on it traditionally in some ways. But when we work together on a story, we brainstorm it from the start, what the story might be. Then I go write it. And in this case, it's kind of traditional because I wrote it and then I handed it to Steve. And when he was doing character designs, he might have said, "What do you think of this?" And I weighed in a little bit about Kit's clothing or her outfits because I really like clothes. And if you know me, I like that kind of thing and style. However, Steve just went and illustrated it like a traditional illustrator, like because I don't want to intercept or I don't want to be involved in his process. I want to see what he brings to the story. And so he went off on his own and illustrated the book. And there were surprises once again, just like in any other book. He came back and all of a sudden there was this chorus of 3 bunnies in the book that were really funny that I didn't know would be in there because that was his storytelling. And so when you work on a picture book, you know, the traditional way would be that a writer writes it, and let's say I like with my most recent picture book, The Itty Bitty Witch, in that case, the editor sent me portfolios of different illustrators once I had sold it to the editor at Two Lions, which is a press through Amazon. And the editor sent me some portfolios and said, "Look, what about these several? I'm thinking about these." And they were awesome artists. And I said, "Those look really good, but this is a really whimsical story and fantastical. And I don't think they quite fit it." And then she sent me images from Cindy Yan, who became the illustrator. And I said, "This is perfect." And so that book, and so that was very traditional. I wrote it, then I handed it over, and Cindy illustrated it. And there were a lot of surprises. I absolutely was in love with it. I mean, she just created this world that was so beautiful and so beyond anything I could have imagined. And I absolutely love the illustrations in this book. And so the editor found someone based on kind of my feedback. And it was really, really amazing to have that experience. And Cindy is so talented. And so it's really cool because for me, I also then got to meet Cindy. And the book was awesome. And so, yeah, there's different ways it happens when you collaborate. And when I, you know, and so, you know, I've done several books with my husband. And when I write a story that fits Steven's style, because he's more comic and humorous in that way.
Food related.
Yeah. He does the Pizza and Taco children's book graphic novel series. But when I write something that fits his style, that's when we work together or when we come up with an idea together. However, The Itty Bitty Witch is fantasy and whimsy, and it is not his style. And so then I just pitched it as a writer. And so it's also knowing that and knowing where your work fits in.
It makes sense. I mean, sometimes you get the luxury of having insight or influence on your artist, but then sometimes you've got to trust your publisher to say, hey, we got some good people here. Trust them because you'll
Yeah.
be impressed. And I remember one of the most exciting things Christina does for me is like, look at these pages, or and maybe Christina, take us through your. I mean, you've had other illustrators with a lot of your different books, but when it came to your first published books by Kids Can Press, with What Lola Wants, that was a heartfelt story about your own self, shown through kind of a different perspective of it. And because of that, obviously, you wanted to be just right. So, what was your process for going through an artist and then being happy with what you got with the final issue? Because I think you get 3 different takes, maybe, because you don't have infinite edits. You want to get this book out. So with that, your edits have to be really important and matter, right?
It's my finding the illustrator was very similar to Trish. Kids Can Press, the editor, provided me with a list of possible people that they were looking at. And I visited their websites, social media, looking at their examples. By the time we looked at Jamie Bauza's page and the example she had, I felt like this could be the person. So she is based in the Philippines. And when I saw the black and white just sketches initially, and I looked at what she did, I was really surprised because what she did really resonated with me. She had put like the tree that was outside my grandfather's house is just exactly where it was. I don't think I told her that because we have never met before. We've never talked online or anything. Your editor more than likely is always your go-between. And so I communicate to editor communicates to illustrator sends back black and white drafts. I look at it, I provide my notes. But when the first ever black and white she sent me, and it was already close to what it looks like here. I told the editor the first word that came to my mind was the word home. So, and I actually had to hold my heart and I felt what she was trying to say. And she made my story come alive. And I told the editor right away, I'm like, first thing I thought of was the word home. She made me feel at home. It reminded me of home. That's when I knew she's the one. And she did a fabulous job, fantastic job, more than I could ever have imagined too. I didn't provide a lot of notes because like Trish said, for authors, we try to let the artist, the illustrator have freedom to interpret our story because they were likely think up of things we probably never thought of. We want them to have creative freedom as well and enjoy their process as well. And so what she came up with was absolutely fantastic, right on the mark. And I got to finally talk to her online on Instagram when she messaged me and said, hey, look, our book is in the Bologna Book Festival. And I'm like, what? Really?
Yay.
Somebody sent it to her and she sent it to me. And that's when we started communicating online. So now we communicate whenever we see the book somewhere. We message each other on Instagram and support each other and follow each other. So it's I know it seems weird, but somehow it works that way, that we don't know each other, but somehow we communicate through our words and our art.
That's awesome. I met my illustrator when we went to we were sent to American Library Association's conference.
That's cool.
To sign books together, and that's where I met her. And then after that, since then, when she lives in Brooklyn, so when I was in New York, at one point, I got to see her again and have lunch, and it was awesome just to have that really cool connection. But yes, it came after the book, not during, and my communication was just like yours, Christina, where the editor was the go-between on the book.
And then you gain a new friend.
It's awesome. And, it's such a talent of a new friend, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the important things we've learned from all of this, I've learned, is it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know, the connections, those people that will give you that help maybe when you're lacking. So make connections because you never know the person you're going to meet that might open the next door for you. It's been amazing. I remember when Christina said, "Hey, you want to meet some of these author people?" Met them and let's have dinner. And I'm like, sure, I like talking to anybody, and I do. And it's been great getting to know Trish and all the different writers and their styles and the authors, the illustrators, and all these different things. So it's expanded my horizons, made me a much more insightful person, and it's really added to our lives. It's not just success, writing, whatever. It's also the relationships you make and the stories you hear. So we're big fans of everybody's work, and we're there to support everybody. But with that, common thing is like say, oh, everybody tells me I should write a book, I should do this and this stuff. But I guess the question is, like, obviously it's not magic. You got to market your work. You got to be out there constantly on the socials. You got to be highlighting not only your work, but your friends, because you can all elevate all the boats, as they say. What is it? Rising tides lift all boats. Same thing there. So ultimately, when it comes to once you've written a book and it's there, it's somewhere, that's just like stage one, right? You've got to actually get it out there. You've got to, because not every publisher is going to do that work to say, here is this awesome book, because they have a billion other books. So how would you say is like, what is, when you think of marketing plans, what would you say is like, hey, these are the things you got to do? And what would you say maybe avoid? And that's by an Angel Sword 21. That's the question came from him.
It's a great question. Christina, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. The thing that I hear the most is to play to your strengths and do what's comfortable. The thing is I've been in this business a long time, and I've done like a lot of promoting on books, and I've done less on other books. And you do want to get yourself out there, but everybody has a different capacity to do that. And so I would say is to pick things you're comfortable with. Like people say, to use the social media spaces that are your most comfortable, and play to your strengths and have fun doing it, and just enjoy your book and put it out there, because it's going to, as individuals, we can only make a certain dent in that anyway. And so you might as well enjoy it. Because the audience does choose some of what happens with books. And, but so I would say, definitely you want to advertise it on social media. You want to partner up with your independent bookstores if you can. You want to have an event. In the event, you want to have a book launch, and that's a party for all your friends and family and everyone who supports you and any new people who might be new to your book. But that's also to build a relationship with bookstores. We have awesome independent bookstores in Minnesota. For children, we have Wild Rumpus and Red Balloon. Moon Palace is also wonderful. Majors
Well,
and
it's a new one. I haven't heard of that one, Trish.
Oh,
Wow,
it's
I'm
awesome.
learning.
Okay, it's awesome. You would love it. And that's in South Minneapolis. But we have, and that one is adult, and so is Majors and Quinn, but they have a children's section. And so what I'm saying is, like, the event is one thing, but you're also introducing yourself to a bookstore, and that bookstore will hopefully then carry your book, and you're making relationships and you're building a career. And so what you want to do marketing wise, I think, is what your capacity is, but also play to your strengths and what you enjoy. And I already said that, but also, like, a lot of people team up with people. There's a lot of people who, if they have a debut book, for example, they'll be in a group of debut picture book authors for 2027, and they'll do that through their agent or through other people they know, and they will. And so once again, community can help you on all of these things, right? And so those would be like my quick tips, because books often have a life of their own. In my world, I've marketed my books a lot, and I've done a lot of school visits to get them in schools. But then Steven, my husband, has a best-selling series called Pizza and Taco, and the reason that came out in the pandemic, and we obviously didn't do a lot of marketing. It was available at Target and Barnes and Noble and online, but it really became a word of mouth book where kids were loving it, and then it got marketed more. And so sometimes they have a life of their own. Obviously, sometimes publishers will join you and do it, but I've kind of seen all different paths, especially with Steven's series that's become really popular. And so I think it just really speaks to, once again, what are you comfortable with? Where are your strengths? How much time do you have? These are the types of questions that you can ask. And who do you know who can help you? So that's the type of advice I would give.
Yeah, it was interesting with even like, we're big comic book fans, and this year Steven was asked to do a comic book giveaway issue that was completely free. He had to create something completely new. You sent us out to find like copies. It was amazing. And I'm like, this is awesome. So it is really finding new audiences maybe that may not know your book or getting it out there. So yeah, it's being innovative, right? It's like, hey, helping other people, getting involved, getting your name out. Cristina has done like
make sure you have a website.
Yes,
have a website. That's
Cristina,
accurate.
that is step one. Thank you for saying that. That is great advice.
And if you don't know how to do it, ask a geeky friend. I'm sure you have one. Squarespace is easy. All these things. Register web domain. It's easy to do. But like Cristina, you've even done like moderation for authors. Trisha, you've also done moderation for authors when they're having their books. It's that like that collaboration,
like,
right?
Todd, you mean like when someone launches their book, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And you're asking them questions. You're kind of doing the interview like I'm right now. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great. Conversation. And that's how you meet another person, right? That's how you
build relationships, you partner. It gets you also on the bookstore's map. When you've got your book coming up, they'll keep that in mind because they build relationships. So it's kind of great. I mean, just anything else it's always been about relationships. It's a human touch. It's not just being in your own basement writing a book. It's actually getting out there for events. I mean, Trish, you've pulled us together for like, hey, we're going to hang out with people from Wild Rumpus at a gig. Cool. Awesome. You need people to connect with people to make connections because the world is big. Without those personal connections, your book is just one of a billion that get released every year.
Be part of community events too.
Yes,
be part of that. Like Trish and I have both walked in the parade to represent Red Balloon, right, at Grand Old Days in St. Paul. I visited the summer camp for the Cultural Society of Filipino Americans, and neither one of those paid. We were doing it to be part of the community, to be out there and to let people know, hey, we support you. Thanks for your support. We're supporting each other back. We exist. If there's any kind of event that you can be a part of, that's a way to thank your community and for people to know you exist as well. And it's might be a networking opportunity. You just never know who you might meet at these events that might then lead to other opportunities as well. So I know for many of us authors, we might be a little introverted. We do want to just sit in the basement and write our stories, but don't be afraid to go outside and meet new people and network and build community and be part of the community. Volunteer your time. Sometimes you're going to have to start just for free gigs to get yourself out there, and it's okay. And then you work your way up to eventually, hopefully, start getting paid for it. But that's how you start building your network of people in your community.
Yeah. One last question. This is from Anubis XG. He says, have you noticed a climate change in kids' literature? What gets pushed back more that didn't used to? Obviously, this is about a climate of book bans and things you can touch and authors getting, pushback and things like that. I know even your husband, Trisha, has been pushed back because of his even just political views. I mean, it's kind of sucks that, the content isn't the problem. It's just we disagree with the author. And I'm like, hey, you know what? there's a lot of authors that are dirtbags, but their works are beloved. And why is it a problem now than it used to be with, carousers and drunkards and, people that did things. So with that, obviously your rights as a person to write what you want, but it's also a commercial endeavor, things like that. How do you balance that? I mean, what is the kind of like, what is the path forward? Obviously your integrity versus a paycheck versus, how do you balance it? Because, you don't want to starve and, die because you stood on your rights. You got to survive in this era that we're in, which is it's like walking a tightrope. So any advice there or just any watch outs?
Christina, why don't you start there?
Wanted to share a couple of resources first. To learn more about book bans, there's lots of resources like Pen America, that's from the US, Pen America, and there's also Pen America International. We've met some of those folks before. There's Authors Against Book Bans, so do your research and learn more about how you can support authors, support libraries and librarians as well in the schools and in the public libraries as they fight for everybody's rights to read what they want and write what they want. It is a hot topic right now, but I think joining some of these organizations and supporting them, sharing books with other people. If you are at a library, read the banned books. There's a lot of libraries and a lot of bookstores now that put up displays of, read banned books, and support all those people, support all the writers. And I think the more momentum we get that way, the more we can hopefully decrease the impact that these bans are making.
And I think, as writers, I am a white cis. I am a white cis woman who, I'm heterosexual, and so I am of the majority, and the book banning is happening to the non-majority writers. So we're talking about our GLBTQI plus, and we're talking about our non-white communities. And it's happening with anything from writing about identity, whether it's a first kiss and very innocent, to historical fiction. And it is political and it is terrible. And so as a writer, I think being educated on it, like Cristina said, is a great path. But when it comes down to it, I hope we also know that writing our stories and creating art is the way through these times. And so I definitely hope that everybody out there will write their heart story and put their all into their craft, like we kind of talked about in the beginning.
I agree. And I think it's important for us who are not creators, but want to make sure we preserve these works of art. Because I always say this, you don't have to read those books, but you should not make them vanish. You should make them accessible to everybody who wants them. And you know what? We all make choices, right? It's not for me. That's fine. Move on. It's okay. So, support your public libraries. And if you can get involved in your local communities, tell you, man, I will tell this, anybody, local politics are important because they impact everyone around you. So
your school boards get involved.
School boards and part of your be a city council member, because there's elections every year. And the person that might be elected might be a person that's actually driven by a national organization that wants to do bad things. So be involved, make the change you want to be. I was a board member of my son's music boosters. It was fun. I enjoyed it. They called me out and called me Todd at the end of the year because I was getting money for them and handling the books. And man, that sucked, but it was great. We enjoyed it. So with that, one last question. This is going to end on a fun note before we move on and say goodnight. I've got 2 questions. What is one literature character you would like to meet in real life? Like just comes pops up Roger Rabbit style. What is that one character? And then what is the one character that is you don't control, but you would love to write?
One character you'd love to write? What was that?
Yeah, one character, like anybody. Mickey Mouse, Spider-Man, things like that, you know.
Fun.
I don't know. Just, yeah, any from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it, Cristina?
I'm thinking, do you have somebody?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to meet Sherlock Holmes for sure. I just would. I'm just such a fan. I would love to like meet that character and I would love to be on the case. And as far as writing, I think that's a harder one. I have to think about that for a little bit more, but I don't know. I think it would be pretty cool to write Wonder Woman. I do.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice. That's the great thing about it is she's an internal character and everybody has a view and a story to tell about Wonder Woman. That's why those characters don't age, because everybody has the perfect Wonder Woman story, the perfect Batman, the perfect Superman, the perfect Spider-Man story. And that's what makes those characters awesome, because everybody has an affinity for those characters. Okay, Cristina, my wife.
You said Sherlock Holmes. That's pretty awesome. So I'm going to go with Hercule Poirot.
Yay. Love it. I love it.
The Belgian with the mustache.
Talking to each other.
Agatha Christie.
He's sitting there having tea or wine with this guy as he's twirling, that little mustache, and with his accent and how he's just so anal about details and things. And I'd love to have dinner with him and find out more about how he solves the mysteries. Trish, you and I are so the same, because I would love to write any of the Marvel superheroes, any of them.
You would be amazing at it, Cristina.
Yeah, you wrote DC.
You did DC. I mean, it's
Marvel.
I would be natural.
I would love to do something like what was done with Miles Morales, Spider-Man. Something.
Oh yeah, totally.
Maybe I can come up with a Filipino version.
I'm gonna call your bluff. You'd love to write Miss Marvel. She's one of your favorite characters.
That's true. I do love Miss Marvel.
That would be so. Any of these.
I know you too well.
I could see you doing any of these. These are awesome.
Excellent.
Well, we put it out in the universe, Trish. Maybe the universe will reward us.
As right now, we need more voices in comic books, because a lot of the stuff just is always, it's getting better. Gail Simone's one of my favorite writers. She's doing X-Men right now. She's amazing. She was a former hairdresser and became an amazing writer, and it's great to see her. She's amazing. Great voice. But you know what? We need more cool viewpoints from these awesome characters that we've known for years. Too many white dudes writing these characters. Come on. Some of them are really good, but not everybody knows how to write a female character or write a male character with a different perspective. So with that, we are done. We had an amazing journey with these awesome writers, these creators, these amazing women who are making our lives richer and better through the art of writing and storytelling. So with that, now it's my time to ask you where people can check out your stuff, where they can reach out and get all the good stuff that you're working on. So we're starting to start with you, Trish. Tell me where you can find your stuff and keep up with you around the web.
The best place would be at Trisha Speed Shaskan on Instagram or my website. Those are my two best places, which is www.trishaspeedshaskan.com. Very simple. Those would be the best places.
Best middle name ever, Speed. It's like you're a Flash character. I love that.
Well, it's actually my maiden name, so it's a last name.
My middle name is Anton, and nobody said that's an amazing name. But we move on from there to the love of my life. I'm the hype man for these amazing artists, and I love it so much to be able to add my ability to be annoying and loud to help these guys be their best. So, Cristina,
website is CristinaOxtra.com. Instagram is at kick butt writer, and I just want to caveat, I'm saying I'm not because I kick butt at writing, it's because I do taekwondo, so that's why I got the name kick butt writer. So just putting it out there. I'm not being like, showing off. It's just that is my handle on Instagram, and then Facebook is In Her Right Mind. Right is spelled WRITE. So.
And these people also need to get on the BlueSkys, because Twitter doesn't exist anymore. Get on BlueSky. That's really more conversational fun. Instagram's great for pictures, but BlueSky is a great place to kind of have a little more dialogue with cool fans. So get on BlueSkys, guys. Come on now. Need me to help you? I'll do it. I'm there.
I'm on it
it's
really
a great place
minimally, Todd. So
you got to do it. I'm there. I'm doing all the cool things.
Okay, I'll have to find you on there.
I will follow you, Trisha, if you join. And Christina, I set yours up, and that's the challenge being married to an artist. She gets to be a little bit stuck.
Remember what Trish said, advice, you do what's comfortable for you, right? Because you can get overwhelmed to have 10 million.
I've also been told to shut up
and market yourself.
I've also been told to shut up and leave, so I will do that now. It's a good time to shut my mouth and say thank you for joining us on this amazing journey on your awesome, experiences and being the authors that we love, that make our kids and adults' lives better. So thank you so much. For myself, I'm at Todd Oxtra, at T Oxtra on the BlueSkys and the Instagram. But more importantly, I am at the Fandom Foundry. We have a Discord. We have a YouTube channel. We have a website. We are on podcast services around the globe. And we want to hear from you. We want people to talk about the amazing stuff they make on MakerCast. If you like fantasy football, we got a podcast show for that called Waiver Wire Wizards. If you want to talk about why you have been a gamer all these years and why you still love it today, why we play, and you want to just talk about the awesome stuff you do every week and the things that make your life better, check out Best Thing This Week. It's food, it's shows, it's TV, it's concerts, music, whatever. It's a collectible that you bought, maybe like the sort of Thundera like me, that I bought it on Etsy, or no, I bought it on Temu. That's right, a piece of crap, but it was cool. I got it. I love it. That's the thing I like to do. I like to talk about the awesome things that make our lives better. So with that, thank you so much, folks. MakerCasts is all about the artists that we love. They make our lives better. Life without art just sucks. So with that, I want to say thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And if you're interested in being in the show, let me know. I'd love to talk to you. Night all. Thank you so much, and take care.